Get this over and into place. Bring this a little bit closer. With another Revenge of the Sith live chapter. Today we will be reading chapter 8, which is the first chapter of part 2, Seduction. As Anakin will be seduced by the dark side of the Force. Let's see, I really gotta get to the new Jedi Order. It's taking me far too long. Where is... I guess Vector Prime's probably on the bottom of my stack here. Howdy, Barrett. Howdy, Blurry. Welcome. We're going to be reading Chapter 8 today of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. Masterpiece novel. This is... Let's see, is there anything more of... Yeah, they're still crashing the Invisible Hand, but it'll be down soon enough. And they'll be back on Coruscant for a heroic welcome. Let's see, yeah. We're dealing with suspicion about who Darth Sidious is. They still have no clue. Little bit of a goof on their part, bit dumb, but we give them a pass. They've never seen Return of the Jedi. They don't know what he looks like. This will be a fun one. I just read for the first time Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, which is the sort of unofficial sequel to Episode 3. Obviously, you know, Episodes 1, 2, and 3 are a trilogy on their own, but then there is also a trilogy of novels with Revenge of the Sith as the middle, with James Luceno having written Labyrinth of Evil, and then Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader to be a prequel and sequel to just this one. And I had never listened to, or I had never read Dark Lord up until, I think, yesterday. And it's exciting to finally have the context of what that one had to offer, because it's always been a very well recommended one, and it was very good. How's it going, Ghost Spartan? Welcome. We're going to be starting in just a few. Give everyone else a couple minutes to show up if they like to. But yeah, highly recommend Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader to any Vader fans. You get quite a bit of him, you know, his usual unstoppable nature. But moreover, it's a great introspective book. It's a great look at Anakin, you know, where he's at after Revenge of the Sith. It's also a great look at Palpatine. There are a lot of good scenes of his. Let's see, has your morning seen any Dark Jedi? The only person I've seen who doesn't live here was the DoorDash driver who delivered our breakfast that we ordered, so I hope not. If DoorDash is hiring dark wizards, then we're going to be in a bit of trouble. Big fan of your page. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that it's inspired you to start reading the novels. There's a lot of really great stuff in there. What have you start with? What have you read so far? Let's see. Why doesn't Ahsoka appear in any of the movies? Quite simply, she didn't exist for 6 out of 9, and for the last 3, they just didn't care to put her in. Although her voice is in one of them, so she's pretty close. But yeah, even if she did, like, I guess, you know, she could have been in 4, 5, and 6. She's alive during them, but yeah, she wouldn't be created for another 30 years. Which, yeah, has always been a little bit awkward. Revenge of the Sith, and now you're reading Master of Evil. Nice! Revenge of the Sith, obviously phenomenal. Master of Evil was a good one. I liked it. And if you want more Vader, Dark Lord is a good one to go to next. That one is Legends, but it's still well worth reading. Let's see. Is there any Legends novel that has pictures? It's a good question. I don't think so. These are mostly pretty typical chapter books. Not a lot of art throughout any of them. I can only think of a handful just in general that have pictures. I think if you wanted images, you could go for the comics. There's a lot of great Legends comics. Knights of the Old Republic is a good one. Tales of the Jedi, I love. Let's see, how are things? They're not bad. How about you, Italian Irishman? How you doing? How did you get into the books? You've only watched 1 to 9 and Clone Wars. It's tough to remember because I started several years ago, and my memory is just awful. But I think it was. I'm pretty sure the first book I read was Resistance Reborn, which is set between 8 and 9, and I think it was just the lingering feeling of like I wish we'd gotten a little bit more from some of these characters. I liked Poe a lot. I liked Ray and Finn, and so I was like, I wish we had gotten some other stuff using them. And so I picked up Resistance Reborn because I happened to see it in Barnes and Noble and thought like, what the heck, why not? Uh, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was a solid adventure novel, and I thought like, well, this isn't even like I've heard of some Star Wars novels that people say are like incredible. So I thought like, hey, I'll branch out, and I think the next one I got was Thrawn, which amazing. Let's see. You enjoy every Star Wars movie from 1 to 9? I do too. Obviously, there's a range of quality in there, and I can acknowledge like which ones are more actually bad. But like, I can put on even the worst among them and find something to enjoy. Even the most troubled have strong suits, despite what the internet would lead you to believe for its entire lifetime. You've read most of the common good books. What's a hidden gem, canon, or legends? Resistance Reborn is one that I strongly recommend if you like the sequel era. It has one of my favorite First Order villains ever. For a good Legends one, I don't know if it counts as a hidden gem, but I don't think Truce at Bakura gets enough appreciation. I really like that one. It's very weird, and so I think a lot of people kind of write it off for that. Without spoiling, it's not even a spoiler, but like the concept is dinosaurs stealing people's souls to put them into robots, and it's like I could make that sound more normal, but it's like that is the gist of it. But it's a really stellar book, and I think that one's a very strong one. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there are any other one-off books that don't get enough appreciation. Allegiance, maybe, is a Timothy Zahn novel that it kind of gets overshadowed by the Thrawn books, but. Let's see. You start with the Bane trilogy, or you think Thrawn was first? Both would be great places to start. And as Ferdawa is asking, what do you recommend to read first? Thrawn, the 2017 one, is a great first book. You could also go to the original Thrawn trilogy from 1991. That would be Heir to the Empire. But mostly, what I recommend is finding a one-off book that appeals to you. Some character or idea that's really up your alley. If you like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you could check out Master and Apprentice, or you could check out Kenobi, set right after Revenge of the Sith. If you like Darth Maul, Shadowhunter is a fantastic novel. How's it going, XCJ? Let's see. Are there any Mandalorian books? There are quite a few. I haven't read a ton of them just because I'm not the biggest Boba Fett fan. Not that I dislike him, I just have never felt the drive to really seek those out. Well, thank you for the follow, New Level. But there's a bounty hunter trilogy about Boba Fett. There's a trilogy called The Mandalorian Wars. And I would recommend Republic Commando is about clone commandos, but every book focuses a lot on Mandalorian culture. Now, some of that culture has been overridden. George essentially disregarded a lot of it when he was making the Clone Wars, and so it doesn't quite line up with what Mandalore is now, but many would say it was cooler, and so I'd still recommend giving it a shot anyways, because these clones, they acknowledge they are sort of offshoot Mandalorians, and they still want to learn a bit about the culture they came from. Let's see, Matt, you have a strange question for me? Yeah, shoot. I think we'll give maybe 2 or 3 more minutes before we jump into the reading here, because I'm enjoying chatting a minute. Would you rather be Jedi during First Order or High Republic? First Order is a terrible time to be Jedi. I would absolutely go High Republic. That sounds way easier. Do you think Thrawn would enjoy reading The Art of War? I think he would. The Art of War is a bit primitive at this point. It was made in a time when it was written for nobles who had no clue what they were doing. So a lot of stuff is pretty basic these days. But I think you would be interested in seeing an early culture learning to do combat. I think you would find it historically valuable. Let's see. You recently got the first book of the Thrawn Ascendancy. Can you start with that? Absolutely, you can. I'm trying to. It's so separate from the rest of the galaxy. It's an interesting one to start with, but like I love the Ascendancy novels. So if the style of it seems interesting to you, then there's no, there's no required reading beforehand for Ascendancy. I think I could let you know that like you're essentially starting with the Phantom Menace, as opposed to starting with A New Hope. So like if you've watched those, the prequels are made with the knowledge that you've probably read the originals. So you've read the like 2017 Thrawn trilogy to read Thrawn Ascendancy, but it is a prequel. So like there's no earlier context you needed. You won't be lost or anything. And I think those are great books. Let's see, you got Kylo Ren, Legacy of Vader, and Kanan Jarrus for Christmas. Nice, both great comic runs. Let's see, you love the lightsabers in the back. Thank you. They're all very nice. Are there any Legends comics? Oh, tons. Are you kidding? Hundreds and hundreds, boatloads. Like I said, yeah, Tales of the Jedi, Knights of the Old Republic. It's not just like an adaptation of the game; it's its own storyline, just set during that same time period. And then, I mean, tons. There were like whole runs of the Clone Wars. Everything before Disney took over is Legends, and there's lots and lots of them. What's the most overlooked Jedi ability? Probably Force Speed. They never use that one, and it drives me nuts because it seems really useful. Thank you, Morin, for the follow. Let's see. Oh, you've read a bit of Heir to the Empire. So now this is me using the term poorly. When I said original Thrawn trilogy, I did mean it's the one that's Thrawn Alliances, and then Thrawn Treason, because those are direct prequels to, or they're direct sequels, I should say, to Ascendancy, given that they are all canon novels. Heir to the Empire is also great, and there is some stuff that will give you a little bit of not extra context in the original ones, but it's kind of like, when in the prequels, when like Palpatine shows up and, people who've seen the originals know like, oh, hey, that's the Emperor. He's just a senator right now, but we know he'll be the Emperor eventually, There's some stuff kind of like that in Heir that you'll know if you've read Heir to the Empire, if you've read the other Thrawn trilogy. But Ascendancy being the first chronologically, there's no risk of like spoiling yourself. Let's see, now where's your Jedi robe? This is sacrilege. The Jedi robes are just for Thursdays. Today we're doing Revenge of the Sith reading, but we're just chatting for a little bit before we jump in. We'll be reading Chapter 8 today. Let's see. But I'm doing a little bit of chat because I always love talking to you all. When does the new Thrawn trilogy and Thrawn Ascendancy take place? Thrawn Ascendancy takes place during the Clone Wars. But I can't stress this enough. It's not about the Clone Wars. It is in a separate part of the galaxy. There is one brief moment of crossover where you learn that, like, oh, the Clone Wars are happening in the main galaxy while this is far off on the fringes. Then there's the 2017 Thrawn trilogy, often referred to as the canon Thrawn trilogy, the Disney Thrawn trilogy. That one takes place during the Galactic Civil War. It starts, I think, around 10 BBY, and it continues up until, like, it crosses over a lot with Thrawn's appearances in Rebels. So it's, right up to A New Hope, without ever actually reaching A New Hope. Then Heir to the Empire is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So you've got quite a gap between all the Thrawn trilogies. Are there any characters that are canonically trans? Yeah, quite a few actually. I'm trying to think. The High Republic is littered with them. They always focus a lot on diversity and inclusion. But the one that comes to mind is there's a clone trooper named Sister, who is transgender. Who I'm not the biggest fan of as a character. Nothing to do with her being transgender. It's just the execution of the idea that I think is a little bit lacking. I think there are more interesting ways they could have done Sister as a character. But I'm trying to think any in particular in the High Republic. There's a lot of High Republic characters, so I'm struggling to come up with any particular trans characters. But yeah, there are definitely a few of them. Let's see, you're doing a bit of a chronological journey. Just finished the KOTOR comics. Nice. I always caution against chronological for like the whole series just because there's a lot of mixed bag in the earlier stuff. But I hope you enjoy it. There's certainly some good stuff coming up for you. Do you think they should retcon the entire sequel trilogy different dimension? No, for the same reason I said no when people asked if they should retcon the prequels. I think that the more we retcon, the worse the series is going to get as people start to question, this is what happened with comic books, is people started to ask, why should I read this if it's just going to not matter in a week? I think that the series being purchased by another company is the one circumstance that I will accept. Like, okay, if someone new takes over and they don't want to deal with any of this, they can retcon it. But I would rather build on and improve from the admittedly flawed stuff we have than start like just crossing out sections. Let's see, you're reading Brotherhood, then going to Revenge of the Sith. Nice. Little Clone Wars journey. Zahn Thrawn is the best Thrawn. Oh, yeah. No one else has managed to do Thrawn as well as Zahn does. I don't know, like, because he's a bit, cliche even when Zahn does him. He's got a little bit of that, like, omnipotence, but it works when Zahn does it. I don't know. Thank you, Jonathan, for the follow. Let's see, do I know this Money and Lincoln meme? I'm afraid I don't. Let's see, you're still waiting for the Maul Shadow Lord trailer to drop. I am too. When are we going to get, like, they announced that forever ago, it feels like. And you've been a Star Wars fan since childhood. Hell yeah, this is your way of getting into the EU. I absolutely encourage that. I just don't know about, like, starting at the beginning, if anything, like, to me, it starts with some of the worst projects, which is why I tend to encourage against it. Like, I'm not crazy about the whole Dawn of the Jedi era. And then once you get to the modern, like, the comics are pretty good, but Revan, the novel, is less so. So it's like there's a lot of, like, kind of mixed quality up until, like, once you get to the prequel era, you get, a bit more consistent. Ironically enough, in the prequel era, the movies are probably the worst part. Everything else is pretty solid. Well, thank you, Nick Wyatt, for the follow. And TikTok was banned a year ago. Dang. Feels like yesterday. Oh, howdy, Corbin. And so you read Dawn of the Jedi, followed by Tales. Hell yeah. KOTOR, and you're going to read Revan. I know some people like Revan, so don't necessarily take my word as law. I've met some people who enjoyed it. I think a lot are just a little iffy about, the direction they took with the character, what ends up becoming of a lot of the circumstances around Revan, so, yeah. Let's see, you were so on the Dawn comics, but you really liked Into the Void. Interesting. I haven't actually... I started Into the Void, but I got sidetracked by something else, so I never got to really get into it. I'll have to pick it up again soon. Because, yeah, the Dawn comics, I think they're very much in Star Wars' edgy phase, and I don't care much for it. So I've read them a little bit just so that I could say, I'm still up to date on Star Wars, but... Ooh. I hope that didn't sound terrible. Howdy, Corbin. Thank you for the heart, and you're not too late. We're actually about to start the reading, probably at 11:20. I'm just having too much fun chatting. I'm getting distracted. Is Din the best Mandalorian in your opinion? He's certainly my favorite. I'm not too deep into the Mandalorians, but Din is probably my number one. And have I read the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin? I haven't. I started the first one, and I want to get back to it because I've heard great things. Howdy, Lord K. Oh, yeah, you're going to do Darth Bane soon. Nice. That's an excellent trilogy. Anakin calling Ahsoka Snips is adorable. There's a great moment using that in one of the later Vader books that really is fantastic. Dude, you must. Oh, on the Han Solo trilogy? I know. I really want to get to that one. That's high on my list of, like, I want to do that soon. But then, there's so many of these suckers. Han Solo never would have been killed the way he was if you read those books. I'll be interested to see how that factors in. I think that Han, dying to try to save someone he loves is very in character for who he's been. Although I admit I still don't love the circumstances around it. That's my general thoughts on the sequels tend to be like, I don't agree with many of the like, this is out of character, this like breaks canon or whatever. That doesn't mean I like the choices. And Corbin, the Astinka army, we're taking off, we're storming the palace. I just had the president of Lucasfilm replaced so that we could have him in there. He grew up very rough. Oh, I know. I mean, that's even true in canon. Like, on the streets of Corellia, Han was, like, in the books, I know he's more of a literal pickpocket, but in the movie, he's still a street rat. So he's absolutely still scrappy. They're similar backstories. Tuesday after TFA release, a kid at my school had, like, a t-shirt that said Han Solo dies. It was so rude. Have you had the Dubai chocolate latte? No. I saw it on the app as I was ordering this, and I was like, ugh. Just immediately. I don't get the Dubai chocolate thing. Just crazy overpriced pistachios. Not for me. But I should hop in. We're here to read, not to canoodle. And so today we will be reading Chapter 8 of Revenge of the Sith by Matthew Stover. We are still on the invisible hand, that I believe has ripped in half, and so we are now crashing down onto the surface of Coruscant. Yes, a reading from the book of Revenge of the Sith, as told by Matthew. And I see you just noticed my shirt. Yes, I love this one. And let's dive in. Chapter 8, Fault Lines. Mace Windu hung onto the corrugated hatch grip beside the gunship's open troop bay with one hand, squinting into the wind that whipped his overcloak behind him. His other hand shaded his eyes against the glare from one of the orbital mirrors that concentrated the capital's planet's daylight. The mirror was slowly turning aside now, allowing a band of twilight to approach the gunship's destination. That destination, a kilometer-thick landing platform in the planet's vast industrial zone, was marked with a steeply slanting tower of smoke and vapor that stretched from the planet's surface to the uppermost reaches of the atmosphere. A tower that only now was beginning to spread and coil from its tiny source point to a horizon-spanning smear across the stratospheric winds. You know what? Shoot. I've done this wrong because I didn't realize we didn't actually read this first bit before. Between sections, there's always a little epithet, so I'm going to read real quick. Let me get into the right vibe. The dark is generous, and it is patient. It is the dark that seeds cruelty into justice, that drips contempt into compassion, that poisons love with grains of doubt. The dark can be patient, because the slightest drop of rain will cause those seeds to sprout. The rain will come, and the seeds will sprout, for the dark is the soil in which they grow, and it is the clouds above them, and it waits behind the star that gives them light. The dark's patience is infinite. Eventually, even stars burn out. How'd we do? How's my dramatic reading voice? I wish I don't have like the baritone of a Mark Thompson to really get that. But I love those bits. Those little just sections of poetry around the darkness between chapters. Eventually even stars burn out. Oh. And yeah, that's going to be... Everyone remember that phrase, because that's going to become very relevant soon. At which part of the book are you? We're just starting Section 2, Seduction. So the invisible hand is about to crash onto Coruscant. Thank you for the roses, Corbin. And with that, let's jump back. You know, we were right at the start of the chapter anyways. The gunship roared over the bottomless canyons of Durasteel and Permacrete that formed the landscape of Coruscant, arrowing straight for the industrial zone without regard for the rigid traffic laws that governed flight on the galactic planet. Until martial law was officially lifted by the Senate, the darkening skies would be traveled only by Republic military craft, Jedi transports, and emergency vehicles. The gunship qualified as all three. Mace could see the ship now, what was left of it, resting on the scorched platform far ahead. A piece of a ship, a fragment, less than a third of what had once been the Trade Federation flagship, still burning despite the gouts of fire suppression foam raining down on it from 5 different ships and the emergency support clone troops who surrounded it on the platform. Mace shook his head. Skywalker again. The Chosen One. Who else could have brought in this Hulk? Who else could have even come close? The gunship swung into a hot landing, repulsors howling. Mace hopped out before it could settle and gave the pilot an open-palm gesture to signal him to wait. The pilot, faceless within his helmet, responded with a closed fist. Though, of course, the pilot wasn't faceless at all. Under his armored helmet, that clone pilot had a face that Mace Windu remembered all too well. That face would always remind him that he had once held Dooku within his grasp and had let him slip away. Across the platform, an escape pod hatch cycled open. Emergency crews scrambled with an escape slide, and a moment later, the Supreme Chancellor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin Skywalker were all on the deck beside the burning ship, closely followed by a somewhat battered R2 unit that lifted itself down on customized maneuvering rockets. Mace strode swiftly out to meet them. Palpatine's robes were scorched and tattered at the hem, and he seemed weak. He leaned a bit on Skywalker's shoulder as they moved away from the ship. On Skywalker's other side, Master Kenobi seemed a touch the worse for wear himself, caked with dust and leaking a trickle of blood from a scalp wound. Skywalker, by contrast, looked every bit the HoloNet hero he was supposed to be. He seemed to tower over his companions, as though he had somehow gotten even taller in the months since Mace had seen him last. His hair was tousled, his color was high, and his walk still had the grounded pace of a natural fighter. But there was something new in his physicality. In the way he moved his head, perhaps, or the way the weight of Palpatine's arm on his shoulder seemed to somehow belong there. Or something less definable. Some new ease, new confidence, an aura of inner power. Presence. Skywalker was not the same young man the Council had sent off to the Outer Rim 5 standard months ago. "Chancellor," Mace said as he met them, "are you well? Do you need medical attention?" He gestured over his shoulder at the waiting gunship. "I have a fully equipped field surgery." No need," Palpatine said rather faintly. "Thank you, Master Windu, but I am well. Quite well, thanks to these two." Mace nodded. "Master Kenobi? Anakin?" "Never better," Skywalker replied, looking as if he meant it, and Kenobi only shrugged, with a slight wince as he touched his scalp wound. "Only a bump on the head. That field surgery must be needed elsewhere." "It is." Mace looked grim. "We don't even have a preliminary estimate of civilian casualties." He waved off the gunship, and it roared away toward the countless fires that painted red the approach of night. "A shuttle that's on its way. Chancellor, we'll have you on the Senate floor within the hour. The HoloNet has already been notified that you will want to make a statement." I will indeed." Palpatine touched Mace on the arm. "You have always been of great value to me, Master Windu. Thank you." Got 2 pages. Oh, thank you for the follow, user. And is your favorite lightsaber color green? I've leaned towards yellow recently, but green is still a close second. "The Jedi are honored to serve the Senate, sir." There might have been the slightest emphasis on the word Senate. Mace remained expressionless as he subtly moved his arm away from the Chancellor's hand. He looked at Obi-Wan. "Is there anything else to report, Master Kenobi? What of General Grievous?" "Count Dooku was there," Skywalker interjected. He had a look on his face that Mace couldn't decipher, proud yet wary, even unhappy. "He's dead now." "Dead?" He looked from Anakin to Obi-Wan and back again. "Is this true? You killed Count Dooku." "My young friend is too modest. He killed Count Dooku." Smiling, Kenobi touched the lump on his head. "I was taking a nap." "But..." Mace blinked. Dooku was to the Separatists what Palpatine was to the Republic. The center of gravity, binding together a spiral galaxy of special interests. With Dooku gone, the Confederacy of Independent Systems would no longer really be a confederacy at all. They'd fly to pieces within weeks. Within days. Mace said again, "But..." And in the end, he couldn't think of a but. This was all so astonishing that he very nearly, almost but not quite, cracked a smile. "That is," he said, "the best news I've heard since—" He shook his head. "Since I can't remember. Anakin, how did you do it?" Inexplicably, young Skywalker looked distinctly uncomfortable. That newly confident presence of his collapsed as suddenly as an overloaded deflector, and instead of meeting Mace's eyes, his gaze flicked to Palpatine. Somehow Mace didn't think this was modesty. He looked to the Chancellor as well, his elation sinking, becoming puzzlement tinged with suspicion. "It was entirely ordinary." No, hang on, very wrong. "It was entirely extraordinary," Palpatine said blandly, oblivious to Mace's narrowing stare. "I know next to nothing of swordplay, of course. To my amateur's eye, it seemed that Count Dooku may have been a trace overconfident, especially having disposed of Master Kenobi so neatly." Obi-Wan flushed just a bit, and Anakin flushed considerably more deeply. "Perhaps young Anakin was simply more highly motivated," Palpatine said, turning a fond smile upon him. "After all, Dooku was fighting only to slay an enemy. Anakin was fighting to save, if I may presume the honor, a friend." Mace's scowl darkened. Fine words. Perhaps even true words, but he still didn't like them. No one on the Jedi Council had ever been comfortable with Skywalker's close relationship with the Chancellor. They'd had more than one conversation about it with Obi-Wan, while Skywalker had still been his Padawan, and Mace was less than happy to hear Palpatine speaking for a young Jedi who seemed unprepared to speak for himself. He said, "I'm sure the Council will be very interested in your full report, Anakin," with just enough emphasis on full to get his point across. Skywalker swallowed, and then, just as suddenly as it had collapsed, that aura of calm, centered confidence rebuilt itself around him. Yes, of course, Master Windu." "And we must report that Grievous escaped," Obi-Wan said. "He is as cowardly as ever." Mace accepted this news with a nod. "But he is only a military commander. Without Dooku to hold the coalition together, these so-called independent systems will splinter, and they know it." He looked straight into the Supreme Chancellor's eyes. "This is our best chance to sue for peace. We can end this war right now." And while Palpatine answered, Mace Windu reached into the Force. Let's see, I'll take a pause there. That Obi-Wan voice there, thank you. I try my best on all the voices. I feel like I'm struggling to get Mace to sound all that different from Anakin, so I'm going to need to figure out how to lean a bit more into Sam Jackson, since they are going to share, unfortunately, quite a few scenes. And is the book story different to the movie? I mean, if you listen to that last scene, like, a little. It's, same broad strokes. It's the same events generally. But the way that they take place, the conversations that people have, the way that the characters show themselves is all very tremendously different. So it feels like a total overhaul, in my opinion. And yo, Unc Smut, when as soon as they publish a Star Wars novel with some, publish that Obi-Wan and Satine on the run on Mandalore, then that's when we'll get it. Have you considered reading audiobooks? I've thought about trying to get into voice acting. I just don't know where. It's tough to begin, But I would love to reach out, and I suppose this is effectively like me building up my portfolio to show, like, hey, I can kind of do it with some good editing. Are the other novelizations good? Some of them. They're not as good as this one. This is by far the best, but they're, generally I would say the novels are a little bit better than the movie as far as characterization and stuff goes. You lose a lot by not having visuals and sounds, but they're good stories that can add a little bit to most of the movies. Particularly the worse movies. The worse the movie, the better the novel, A New Hope and Revenge of the Sith are the only novelizations you've read. I haven't read all of them, but Attack of the Clones is pretty good. Rise of Skywalker is a tremendous help, just because, like I said, worse the movie, the novel brings it up a lot. And yes, the John Williams score really changes it. How's it going, Kevin? Yeah, I go live. Usually at 10, but lately I've had to push it back to 11, so we'll see if I can get back on schedule by some point. And yeah, you're excited for the new KOTOR. I am too. I hope it's good. What is the best Star Wars video game? Probably the Lego one, if we're being honest. Listen to the Force Awakens audiobook. Nice, nice. I listened to most of that, but I didn't like the way it was written. The only saving grace was Mark Thompson, and even it was weird because you could tell that like not everyone had been cast. So like Poe sounds tremendously wrong because presumably he didn't know it was like Oscar Isaacs. And it just in general feels a little off. What time zone is that? Ooh, yeah, that's going to be tricky from Scandinavia. It's EST, so Eastern Standard Time. Are you glad Kathleen Kennedy is gone? Glad is an exaggeration, but I'm hopeful for the future. I think, I've said she gets a lot more hate than is deserved, but at the same time, it has not been a perfect tenure. And so I think that there's room to improve. Are there any Star Wars comics that have Mara Jade? That's a good question. Almost certainly. I mean, you know what? At least there's some post-Return of the Jedi comics that have like her and Luke getting married. She's surely in some of the new Jedi Order comics. I have not read many with her, but I'm certain there are. Is the Old Republic book series worth it? What do you mean by Old Republic book series? Because there's a lot of standalone Old Republic novels. Deceived and Annihilation are examples of that. Those are both good books. I really like Deceived, but there are also like trilogies, like the Darth Bane trilogy, that are very separate to those, but they are also good separately. Let's see. If I buy a lightsaber, what company should I buy them from? I don't know a lot about lightsabers or like what companies are the best or worst. My own bias says that I have a discount code with Saberoo.com, so that's the only one that I could think of. But I would recommend look at like there are people who have like dozens of these and could probably tell you better which sites are ideal. Let's see, Jonathan, you don't want to be that person, but you feel like sexism plays a role in these discussions around the CEO. Absolutely. The CEO of Sony has objectively done a worse job than Kennedy, but gets much less hate because he's a man, and so no one really cares. It's for sure a factor. That's not to say that it like gets rid of actual job performance, but like it would be naive to pretend that it doesn't exist in the Star Wars fandom of all things. Let's see. Yeah, you think any novel that takes place in the Old Republic has the video game logo? Yes. I don't know. I don't know that the Bane trilogy does. I'm not certain about it, but the rest of them, you're correct. Like, yeah, they've all got the Old Republic logo, but they're still like disconnected one-off novels. It's just, yeah, like you said, it's marketing. It's, advertising one with the other. Okay, the Bane trilogy is the exception, yes, because I was gonna say like that one's very separate. But even Revan, which is 2,000 years before the video game, is sort of a prequel to the video game. Let's see, Kathleen Kennedy, from solely a financial standpoint, has only lost money. That's also true. That's the thing. It's, you don't want to lean into it, but at a certain point, it's like, just hasn't been doing a good job. At best, like, even, I don't care as much about money. I care about the quality of projects. And if I'm being extremely generous, it's been hit and miss with her. So it's like, I don't know how she's kept it for this long. I don't know how the CEO of Sony has kept his job for this long, for that matter. They replaced him a while back, but they need a new one again because they're just a mess. Ani, can you tell me your discount code? I can. It should be, actually, if you go to the link in my bio, there's a link to Saberoo.com that should have it written in the link. But it's Let's Duel 15. That's LETTS Duel 15. Let's see. That's what made me think of that, because you're looking at your copy of Revan, and it's got, that's the thing. Revan is the most disconnected, but it does, like, it feeds into the Old Republic. The others are very connected. It's one-to-one, characters from the game making appearances in those books. And let's see. Ultimate FX Saber any good? I unfortunately do not know. And yeah, Corbin, you discussed this with your non-Star Wars finance friend, and he said he was shocked she lasted so long. Lately, I'm shocked at a lot of CEOs and presidents and general marketing people keeping their jobs. I don't understand what their priorities are, but like half of these companies are losing money hand over fist. They're making bomb after bomb. They're all still trying to make streaming work and losing fortunes on it, canceling shows constantly. It's weird. It's a mess. I don't know. Film is in a bad place right now. I think TV is doing a little better, but it's all the same beast, you know. Are the KOTOR games good? They are. I like both KOTORs, although I've never finished the second one. Let's see. What are you looking forward to more, Mandalorian and Grogu or Starfighter? I'm looking forward to, I think, probably Starfighter more of the two. Excuse me, this is not food. Howdy, Hollow Hub. All right. I'm getting too distracted with chatting today. Let's get back to the meat of the matter here. We're here for book. Let's see. So yeah, I stopped there because now we're getting into one of my favorite Mace details from this book. Let's see, I'll recap the last line. And while Palpatine answered, Mace Windu reached into the Force. To Mace's Force perception, the world crystallized around them, becoming a gem of reality shot through with flaws and fault lines of possibility. This was Mace's particular gift, to see how people and situations fit together in the Force, to find the sheer planes that can cause them to break in useful ways, and to intuit what sort of strike would best make the cut. Though he could not consistently determine the significance of the structures he perceived, the darkening cloud upon the Force that had risen with the rebirth of the Sith made that harder and harder with each passing day. The presence of Shatterpoints was always clear. Mace had supported the training of Anakin Skywalker, though it ran counter to millennia of Jedi tradition, because from the structure of fault lines in the Force around him, he had been able to intuit the truth of Qui-Gon Jinn's guess, that the young slave boy from Tatooine was in fact the prophesied Chosen One, born to bring balance to the Force. He had argued for the elevation of Obi-Wan Kenobi to mastership, and to give the training of the Chosen One into the hands of this new, untested master, because his unique perception had shown him powerful lines of destiny that bound their lives together for good or ill. On the day of Palpatine's election to the Chancellorship, he had seen that Palpatine was himself a Shatterpoint of unimaginable significance, a man upon whom might depend the fate of the Republic himself. Now he saw the three men together, and the intricate lattice of fault lines and stress fractures that bound them to the other was so staggeringly powerful that its structure was beyond calculation. Anakin was somehow a pivot point, the fulcrum of a lever with Obi-Wan on one side, Palpatine on the other, and the galaxy in the balance. But the dark cloud on the Force prevented his perception from reaching into the future for so much as a hint of where this might lead. The balance was already so delicate that he could not guess the outcome of any given shift. The slightest tip in any direction would generate chaotic oscillation. Anything could happen. Anything at all. And the lattice of fault lines that bound all three of them to each other stank of the dark side. He lifted his head and looked to the sky, picking out the dropping star of the Jedi shuttle as it swung towards them through the darkening afternoon. "I'm afraid peace is out of the question while Grievous is at large," the Chancellor was saying sadly. "Dooku was the only check on Grievous's monstrous lust for slaughter. With Dooku gone, the General has been unleashed to rampage across the galaxy. I'm afraid that, far from being over, this war is about to get a very great deal worse." "And what of the Sith?" Obi-Wan said. "Dooku's death should have at least begun the weakening of the darkness, but instead it feels stronger than ever. I fear Master Yoda's intuition is correct, that Dooku was merely the apprentice to the Sith Lord, not the Master." Mace started walking towards the small craft dock where the Jedi shuttle would land, and the others fell in with him. "The Sith Lord, if one still exists, will reveal himself in time. They always do." He hoped Obi-Wan would take the hint and shut up about it. Mace had no desire to speak openly of the investigation in front of the Supreme Chancellor. The less Palpatine knew, the better. "A more interesting puzzle is Grievous," he said. "He had you at his mercy, Chancellor, and mercy is not numbered among his virtues. Though we all rejoice that he spared you, I cannot help but wonder why." Palpatine spread his hands. "I can only assume the Separatists preferred to have me as a hostage rather than as a martyr. Though it is of course impossible to say. It may merely have been a whim of the general. He is notoriously erratic." "Perhaps the Separatist leadership can restrain him, in exchange for certain—" Mace let his gaze drift casually to a point somewhere above the Chancellor's head. "Considerations." "Absolutely not." Palpatine drew himself up, straightening his robes. "A negotiated peace would be a recognition of the CIS as a legitimate government of the rebellious systems, tantamount to losing the war. No, Master Windu, this war can end only one way: unconditional surrender. And while Grievous lives, that will never happen." "Very well," Mace said. "Then the Jedi will make the capture of General Grievous our particular task." He glanced at Anakin and Obi-Wan, then back to Palpatine. He leaned close to the Chancellor, and his voice went low and final, with a buried intensity that hinted, just the slightest bit, of suspicion and warning. "This war has gone on far too long already. We will find him, and this war will end." "I have no doubt of it." Palpatine strolled along, seemingly oblivious. "But we should never underestimate the deviousness of the Separatists. It is possible that even the war itself has been only one further move," he said with elegant, understated precision, "in some greater game." Oh, don't you love that? "It's possible," Chancellor Palpatine says. "They may have other plans." Who could guess? Thank you, Lizard King, for the follow. If you're getting into Star Wars, where should you start? Start with the original movies. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 from 1977 through 83. The best movies, and still arguably the high point of the franchise. 50 years later, and it's still like, well, those are still probably the best ones. Let's see. All right. Let me adjust my pillow real quick. Give me a bit more. There we go. Excuse me, miss. You gotta stop messing with my microphone. As the Jedi shuttle swung towards the Chancellor's private landing platform at the Senate offices, Obi-Wan watched Anakin pretending not to stare out the window. On the platform was a small welcome contingent of senators, and Anakin was trying desperately to look as if he wasn't searching that little crowd hungrily for a particular face. The pretense was a waste of time. Anakin radiated excitement so powerfully in the Force that Obi-Wan could Excuse me, ma'am. Obi-Wan could practically hear the thunder of his heartbeat. Obi-Wan gave a silent sigh. He had entirely too good an idea whose face his former Padawan was so hoping to see. When the shuttle touched down, Master Windu caught his eye from beyond Anakin's shoulder. The Korun Master made a nearly invisible gesture, to which Obi-Wan did not visibly respond. But when Palpatine and Anakin and R2 all debarked toward the crowd of well-wishers, Obi-Wan stayed behind. Anakin stopped on the landing deck, looking back at Obi-Wan. "You coming?" "I haven't the courage for politics," Obi-Wan said, showing his usual trace of a smile. "I'll brief the council." "Shouldn't I be there too?" "No need. This isn't the formal report. Besides," Obi-Wan nodded towards the clot of HoloNet crews clogging the pedestrian gangway, "someone has to be the poster boy." Anakin looked pained. "Poster man." Quite right, Obi-Wan said with a gentle chuckle. "Go meet your public, poster man." "Wait a minute, this whole operation was your idea. You planned it. You led the rescue. It's your turn to take the bows." "You won't get out of it that easily, my young friend. Without you, I wouldn't have even made it to the flagship. You killed Count Dooku and single-handedly rescued the Chancellor, all while, I might be forgiven for adding, carrying some old broken-down Jedi Master unconscious on your back. Not to mention making a landing that will be the standard of impossible in every flight manual for the next 1,000 years. Only because of your training, Master. That's just an excuse. You're the hero. Go spend your glorious day surrounded by..." Obi-Wan allowed himself a slightly disparaging cough. Politicians. Come on, Master, you owe me. And not just for saving your skin for the 10th time. 9th time. Cato Nemoidia doesn't count. It was your fault in the first place. Obi-Wan waved him off. See you at the Outer Rim briefing in the morning. Well, all right, just this once. Anakin laughed and waved, and then headed briskly off to catch up with Palpatine as the Chancellor waded into the senators with the smooth-as-oiled transparisteel ease of a lifelong politician. Like, how is it all just so much better than the movie? It really feels so much better. Chief Dab, dang, you missed the first 7 chapters. I'm afraid I cannot start over. But I've been very poorly, but eventually uploading them all to my YouTube channel. So if you wanted to re-listen, they're all going to be available there eventually. Oh, let's see, I didn't say bye to Jonathan, but yeah, Cat demands. She does what she wants. And you're reading Thrawn over again. Hell yeah, that's a good one. I recommend the audiobook on that one. Alright, where were we? The hatch cycled shut, the shuttle lifted off, and Obi-Wan's smile faded as he turned to Mace Windu. You wanted to speak with me. Windu moved close to Obi-Wan's position by the window, nodding out at the scene on the landing platform. It's Anakin. I don't like his relationship with Palpatine. We've had this conversation before. There is something between them, something new. I could see it in the Force. Mace's voice was flat and grim. It felt powerful and incredibly dangerous. Obi-Wan spread his hands. I trust Anakin with my life. I know you do. I only wish we could trust the Chancellor with Anakin's. Yes. Miss, you get out of here. You've lost hanging privileges. Get. Yes, Obi-Wan said, frowning. Palpatine's policies are sometimes questionable, but he dotes on Anakin like a kindly old uncle on his favorite nephew. Mace stared out the window. The Chancellor loves power. If he has any other passion, I have not seen it. Obi-Wan shook his head with a trace of disbelief. I recall that not so long ago you were something of an admirer of his. Things, Mace Windu said grimly, change. Flying over a landscape pocked with smoldering wreckage where once tall buildings filled with living beings had gleamed in the sun, toward a temple filled with memories of so many Jedi who would never return from this war, Obi-Wan could not disagree. After a moment, he said, What would you have me do? I am not certain. You know my power. I cannot always interpret what I've seen. Be alert, be mindful of Anakin, and be careful of Palpatine. He is not to be trusted, and his influence on Anakin is dangerous. But Anakin is the chosen one. All the more reason to fear an outsider's influence. We have circumstantial evidence that traces Sidious to Palpatine's inner circle. Suddenly, Obi-Wan had difficulty breathing. Are you certain? Mace shook his head. Nothing is certain. But this raid, the capture of Palpatine had to be an inside job. And the timing... We were closing in on him, Master Kenobi. The information you and Anakin discovered, we had traced the Sith Lord to an abandoned factory in the works, not far from where Anakin landed the cruiser. When the attack began, we were tracking him through the down-level tunnels. Mace stared out the viewport at a vast residential complex that dominated the skyline to the west. The trail led to the sub-basement of 500 Republica. 500 Republica was the most exclusive address on the planet. Its inhabitants included only the incredibly wealthy or the incredibly powerful, from Wraith Sienar of the Sienar Systems conglomerate to Palpatine himself. Obi-Wan could only say, Oh. We have to face the possibility, the probability, that what Dooku told you on Geonosis was actually true. That the Senate is under the influence, under the control of Darth Sidious. That it has been for years. Do you... Obi-Wan had to swallow before he could go on. Do you have any suspects? Too many. We all know... All we know of Sidious is that he's bipedal, of roughly human conformation, Saint Pistage springs to mind. I wouldn't rule out Masamita either. The Sith Lord might even be hiding among the Red Guards. There's no way to know. Who's handling the questioning? Obi-Wan asked. I'd be happy to sit in. My perceptions are not so refined as some, but... Mace shook his head. Interrogate the Supreme Chancellor's personal aides and advisors? Impossible. But Palpatine will never allow it. Though he hasn't said so, Mace stared out the window. I'm not sure he even believes the Sith exist. Obi-Wan blinked. But how can he... Look at it from his point of view. The only real evidence we have is Dooku's word. And he's dead now. The Sith Lord on Naboo. The Zabrak who killed Qui-Gon. Mace shrugged. Destroyed, as you know. He shook his head. Relations with the Chancellor's office are difficult. I feel he has lost his trust in the Jedi. I have certainly lost my trust in him. But he doesn't have the authority to interfere with a Jedi investigation. Obi-Wan frowned, suddenly uncertain. Does he? The Senate has surrendered so much power, it's hard to say where his authority stops. It's that bad. Mace's jaw locked. The only reason Palpatine's not a suspect is because he already rules the galaxy. Let's see, I'm going to take a pause there. I could use a drink. Let's see, why do we get, nothing of this level in the movie. Oh, wait, Jonathan, yeah, you're still here. Well, I hope you have a good one. I appreciate you swinging by for as long as you did. And thank you, Joseph, for the follow. And yes, the investigation into Sidious is so fleshed out in this. It really feels like they're so close. And yeah, that last line kills me, Mace. The only reason Palpatine isn't a suspect is because he already rules the galaxy. People for years ridiculed the movies for, how do they not realize it's Palpatine? This sets up the much more believable, very human answer, which is that they do a little, but to even consider that it's Palpatine is to accept that we've already lost. And so it's, they can't fathom what else he could want. I also love, something about this book is that this was written before the Clone Wars, and this was written before the comics actually did the same thing, if I recall. To Obi-Wan Kenobi, he just refers to the Sith Lord on Naboo, the Zabrak. He has no idea who Maul is. He does not know the name Maul because Maul died. The only person who knows Maul's name is Sidious. Compared to canon, where Maul becomes a very known quantity by the end of the war. Was the Jedi Council too focused on politics and laws? Not too focused, but they thought of themselves as servants of a republic so strongly that they refused to see that it had already fallen. It's not that they were too focused on politics. It's kind of, not to get very relevant to the modern day, but to any revolution where an important part of being a defender of liberty, of freedom, of anything good is knowing when the institutions you've been working for have turned against that thing. I would point to, you look at every Captain America movie, where at some point or another, Captain America turns on the U.S. government, because he understands when the government is wrong, and he knows that, a government is run by people, and it can be subverted. The Jedi refused to do that part. They thought, whatever the Republic says, we have to do it. And in doing so, they locked themselves to the orders of a Sith Lord and of what was very quickly becoming an empire. So it's, you need to remember that legal doesn't mean good, and illegal doesn't mean bad. Did the Council make many mistakes that led to Order 66 and the Jedi Order being destroyed? So that's always a broad statement. They made mistakes that prevented them from seeing it, but the fact is, the Jedi Order was destroyed because an enemy outwitted them. So it's they failed, but, a lot of people treat it as though it was the Council's fault, as though their actions caused it. They refer to the Jedi Order as a collapse, which isn't what happened. They were destroyed. So it's... I think a lot of people overstate just how much it was the Jedi's fault as opposed to the Sith Lord who tried to destroy them. Let's see, have you read Reign of the Empire? I have. It's phenomenal. I love Alexander Freed. Anything he writes is magnificent. All right, let's see. But we are closer than we have ever been to rooting out the Sith, Obi-Wan said slowly. That can only be good news. While I think that Anakin's friendship with Palpatine could be of use to us in this, he has the kind of Palpatine... Good lord, that whole sentence was a mess. I would think that Anakin's friendship with Palpatine could be of use to us in this. He has the kind of access to Palpatine that other Jedi might only dream of. Their friendship is an asset, not a danger. You can't tell him. I beg your pardon? Of the whole council, only Yoda and myself know how deep this actually goes. And now you. I've decided to share this with you because you are in the best situation to watch Anakin. Watch him. Nothing more. Obi-Wan shook his head helplessly. We don't keep secrets from each other. You must keep this one. Mace laced his fingers together and squeezed until his knuckles crackled like blaster fire. Skywalker is arguably the most powerful Jedi alive, and he is still getting stronger. But he is not stable. You know it. We all do. It is why he cannot be given mastership. We must keep him off the council despite his extraordinary gifts. And Jedi prophecy is not absolute. The less he has to do with Palpatine, the better. But surely... Obi-Wan stopped himself. He thought of how many times Anakin had violated orders. He thought of how unflinchingly loyal Anakin was to anyone he considered a friend. He thought of the danger Palpatine faced unknowingly with a Sith Lord among his advisors. Master Windu was right. This was a secret Anakin could not be trusted to keep. What can I tell him? Tell him nothing. I sense the dark side around him. Around them both. As it is around us all, Obi-Wan reminded him. The dark side touches all of us, Master Windu. Even you. I know that too well, Obi-Wan. For 1 second, Obi-Wan saw something raw and haunted in the Korun Master's eyes. Mace turned away. It is possible that we may have to move against Palpatine. Move against? If he is truly under the control of a Sith Lord, it may be the only way. Obi-Wan's whole body had gone numb. This didn't seem real. It was not possible that he was actually having this conversation. You haven't been here, Obi-Wan. Mace stared bleakly down at his hands. You've been off fighting the war in the Outer Rim. You don't know what it's been like, dealing with all the petty squabbles and special interests and greedy, grasping fools in the Senate, and Palpatine's constant, cynical, ruthless maneuvering for power. He carves away chunks of our freedom and bandages the wounds with tiny scraps of security. And for what? Look at this planet, Obi-Wan. We have given up so much freedom. How secure do we look? Obi-Wan's heart clenched. This was not the Mace Windu he knew and admired. It was as though the darkness and the Force was so much thicker here on Coruscant that it had breathed poison into Mace's spirit, and perhaps was even breeding suspicion and dissension among the members of the Jedi Council. The greatest danger from the darkness outside came with The greatest danger from the darkness outside came when Jedi fed it with the darkness within. He had feared he might find matters had deteriorated when he returned to Coruscant in the temple. Not even in his darkest dreams had he thought it would get this bad. Master Windu, Mace, we'll go to Yoda together, he said firmly, and among the three of us we'll work something out. We will. You'll see. It may be too late already. It may be, and it may not be. We can only do what we can do, Mace. A very, very wise Jedi once said to me, we don't have to win. All we have to do is fight. Some of the lines erased themselves from the Korun Master's face then, and when he met Obi-Wan's eye, there was a quirk at the corner of his mouth that might someday develop into a smile. A tired, sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. I seem, he said slowly, to have forgotten that particular Jedi. Thank you for reminding me. It was the least I could do, Obi-Wan said lightly, but a sad weight had gathered on his chest. Things change indeed. Thank you, Isaac, for the follow. And hell yeah, this makes me want to watch Star Wars. It's sick. Let's see. I want to point out, two great things from this chapter. Such a great look at Mace about what the war has done to him. Earlier, what is it? Obi-Wan reminds Mace, the dark side touches all of us, Master Windu, even you. I know that too well, Obi-Wan. And for 1 second, Obi-Wan saw something raw and haunted in the Corran Master's eyes. That's a reference to Shatterpoint, the prior novel by Matthew Stover about Mace Windu going to his home planet of Harun Kal. It's a brutal, tragic story, and Mace does some rough things. It's really about how there's no good side in war, and how on either side he feels like he's serving evil. And it really, it's a great thing to make a nod to in how Mace is feeling at this point in the war. Anyone who's read it knows it is dark. The other one that Stover includes a footnote to describe is when Obi-Wan tells Mace, a very, very wise Jedi once said to me, "We don't have to win. All we have to do is fight." I think it gets across via context, but Obi-Wan is quoting Mace Windu from a Clone Wars era Star Wars novel. I'm too modest to tell you which one it is. It's also Shatterpoint. It's by him. Absolute Chad move, quoting himself. Let's see, how much longer? Okay, we got just a couple more pages. I was thinking this is starting to get to a long one. But yeah, such a good book. All right. Anakin's heart pounded in his throat, but he kept smiling and nodding and shaking hands, and trying desperately to work his way towards a familiar golden-domed protocol droid who hung back beyond the crowd of senators, right arm lifted in a small, tentative wave at R2-D2. She wasn't here. Why wasn't she here? Something must have happened. He knew, deep in his guts, that something had happened to her. An accident, or she was sick, or she'd been caught in one of the vast number of buildings hit by debris from the battle today. She might be trapped somewhere right now, might be wounded, might be smothering, calling out his name, might be feeling the approach of flames. Stop it, he told himself. She's not hurt. If anything had happened to her, he would know. Even from the far side of the outer rim, he would know. So why wasn't she here? Had something... He could barely breathe. He couldn't make himself even think it. He couldn't stop himself from thinking it. Had something changed for her in how she felt? He managed to disengage himself from Tundra Daumia's clammy grip and insistent invitations to visit his family's deep water estate on Mon Calamari. He slid past the Malastarian Senator Ask-Ak with an apologetic shrug. He had a different senator on his mind. R2 was weeping and beeping and whistling intently when Anakin finally shrugged free of the mass of sweaty, grasping politicians. C-3PO had turned away dismissively. It couldn't have been that bad. Don't exaggerate. You're hardly even dented. R2's answering Feru sounded a little defensive. C-3PO sent a wisp of static through his vocabulary that sounded distinctly like a disapproving sniff. On that point I agree. You're long overdue for a tune-up. And, if I may say so, a bath. 3PO. Anakin came up close beside the droid he had built in the back room of his mother's slave hovel on Tatooine. The droid who had been both project and friend through his painful childhood. The droid who now served the woman he loved. 3PO had been with her all these months, had seen her every day, had touched her, perhaps even today. He could feel echoes of her resonating outward from his electroplated shell, and they left him breathless. "Oh, Master Anakin," 3PO exclaimed, "I am very glad to find you well. One does worry when friends fall out of touch. Why, I was saying to the Senator just the other day, or was it last week, time seems to run together so. Do you think you might have the opportunity to adjust my internal calendar settings while you're... 3PO, have you seen her?" Anakin was trying so hard not to shout that his voice came out a strangled croak. "Where is she? Why isn't she here?" Oh, well, certainly, certainly. Officially, Senator Amidala is extremely busy, C-3PO said imperturbably. She has been sequestered all day in the Naboo emissary, She has been sequestered all day in the Naboo embassy, reviewing the new Security Act, preparing for tomorrow's debate. Anakin couldn't breathe. She wasn't here? Hadn't come to meet him? Over some debate? The Senate. He hated the Senate. Hated everything about it. A red haze gathered inside his head. Those self-righteous, narrow-minded, grubby little squabblers. He'd be doing the galaxy a favor if he were to go over there right now and just... Wait, he murmured, blinking. Did you say, officially? Oh yes, Master Anakin. 3PO sounded entirely virtuous. That is my official answer to all queries regarding the Senator's whereabouts, all afternoon. The red haze evaporated, leaving only sunlight and dizzyingly fresh air. Anakin smiled. And unofficially? The protocol droid leaned close, with an exaggeratedly conspiratorially... Let me try that again. The protocol droid leaned close, with an exaggeratedly conspiratorial whisper. Unofficially, she's waiting in the hallway. It felt like being struck by lightning, but in a good way, in the best way any man has ever felt since, roughly, the birth of the universe. 3PO gave a slight nod at the other senators and the HoloNet crews on the gangway. She thought it best to avoid a public scene, and she wished for me to relate to you that she believes the both of you might avoid a public scene all afternoon, and perhaps all night as well. 3PO? Anakin blinked at him. He felt an irrational desire to giggle. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm sure I couldn't say, sir. I'm only performing as per the Senator's instructions. You... Anakin shook his head in wonder, while his smile grew to a grin he thought might split open his cheeks. You are amazing. Thank you, Master Anakin, though credit for that is due largely, C-3PO made an elegantly gracious bow, to my creator. Anakin could only go on grinning. With that, the golden protocol droid laid an affectionate hand on R2's dome. Come along, R2. I have found the most delightful body shop down in the Lepashian Way. They moved away, whirring and clanking after the senators, who were already off among the HoloNet crews. Anakin's smile faded as he watched them go. He felt a presence at his shoulder, and turned to find Palpatine beside him, with a warm smile and a soft word, as he always seemed to be when Anakin was troubled. What is it, Anakin? The Chancellor asked kindly. Something is disturbing you, I can tell. Anakin shrugged, and gave his head a dismissive shake, embarrassed. It's nothing. Anakin, anything that might upset a man such as yourself is certainly something. Let me help. There's nothing you can do. It's just... Anakin nodded after 3PO and R2. I was just thinking that even after all I've done, C-3PO is still the only person I know who calls me Master. Ah, the Jedi Council. Palpatine slid an arm around Anakin's shoulders and gave him a comradely squeeze. I believe I can be of some use to you in this problem, after all. You can. I should be very much surprised if I couldn't. Palpatine's smile was still warm, but his eyes had gone distant. You may have noticed that I have a certain gift, he murmured, for getting my way. On that last line, the author again has a footnote. Another galaxy-sized understatement. I still think it's funny. He loves those little nods towards what's coming. Oh, it's so good. And yeah, Jesus Christ Anakin is right, you know. This whole section is so good for you know, Anakin, he starts off elated. He's so happy and excited to see her, and then instantly he's in a spiraling panic. She's dead. She's crushed under debris. She's burning to death. And then, no, what if she's cheating on me? What if she's gone? What if she's left me? She doesn't love me anymore. And then he finally, you know, passes it aside. He gets to 3PO and learns maybe she's doing work for the Senate, and his first thought is, I'm going to murder all of them. And then, oh, he's back to happy, you know. As much as I typically reject it, this book does make a good case for Anakin's, you know, people say borderline personality disorder, some people say bipolar. I think it's just that he's a real flighty jerk, but the fact is that Anakin really moves from one huge emotion to another on a whim. Um, and yeah, it's a really great look at how he's doing these days, which is bad. But that is the end of Chapter 8. Chapter 9, simply titled Padme, we're going to get our first reintroduction to the woman of Anakin's affections. And we'll get to, one of the few controversial elements of the novel. Some people aren't crazy about its presentation of Padme, so we'll cross that as we come to it. But yeah, another amazing chapter in the books. So, it's funny because this is like, 2 minutes of movie. It's such an insignificant part of the movie, but it had so much characterization, so much introspection into how each character is doing, how long it's been since Obi-Wan was back on Coruscant, how Mace is handling the war. It's really phenomenal. Let's see, I want to see what other footnotes are there, because Stover's got so many, and they're all so good. He references, a couple of the plot details that he took from Labyrinth of Evil, which is the predecessor to this. And he pays some homage to that. He talks about using some EU material, providing texture for the book. Oh, thank you for the heart, Alf. And yeah, you hadn't heard anything about the Padme stuff. Yeah, not to, color anything from the outset. I always stand pretty squarely on, I understand where people are coming from. Matthew Stover is still fundamentally writing the book that George Lucas wrote. He still is adapting Lucas's story, and so Stover has to write a character who will drop dead if her husband is too mean to her. So what he does is he essentially says that Padme is just as head over heels obsessively in love as Anakin is. That the two of them, because it is there's a little bit of a Romeo and Juliet thing between them. And so she is just as, fanatically into Anakin as he is into her. She's not as, evil about it or anything. But it is very much like a complete and total devotion. And so he leans into that a little bit. And some people think that that's a disservice to her character. They think that, she was much more independent and strong-suited. What is it? There's one particular line that always comes up here. Let's see. Her life before Anakin belonged to someone else, some lesser being to be pitied, some poor, impoverished spirit who could never suspect how profoundly life should be lived. A lot of people hear that line and they're like, oh, that doesn't feel like Padme. And I can see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily disparage the opinion. But I think that A, it's a small thing, and B, I think it fits with just what this story is trying to do. But yeah, her and Dooku are really the two things that ever get brought up as criticisms of this book. It's the treatment of Padme and Dooku being racist. People don't like. But I've never really had an issue with either of them. I think what it does well so tremendously, laughably dwarfs what it struggles with in those few little character moments. Let's see, actually, let me read this. I've never read this footnote. I stopped halfway and never got through the rest of the footnotes, but that's a part of why I'm excited to read this live. Padme never got the screen time or page space that the boys in this story did. To fill in her freeze-frame bio here, I leaned on two plot features, one explicit and one implicit. The implicit one was that, after all, she's Luke and Leia's mom. One of the twins' shared traits is their open-heartedness, and I figured they probably wouldn't have gotten that from Anakin. The explicit one is that this astonishingly accomplished young woman is going to straight-up die of a broken heart. Which, yeah, there's Matthew Stover saying exactly what I just said, that yes, he had to write someone who will die when their heart gets broken, and so he has to write her as impossibly devoted, to the extent that, yeah, her life is so tremendously strong on him. God, every time I read more from Matthew Stover, I love him, because here's another one. at the end of the next section, she is more now than Anakin Skywalker's wife. She is the mother of Anakin Skywalker's unborn child. And in the footnotes, I know how this sounds. Believe me, I do. This is supposed to be about how Padme feels, not who she is. Groundwork for the death by heartbreak thing. And yeah, that's the thing. He is effectively writing someone who will drop dead when their husband is too mean to them. And I think especially reading Stover's other work, it's very clear to see that it's not a personal thing. It's not, that he just doesn't know how to write women or thinks that women should be devoted to their men. Heroes Die, his main series, is actually quite dramatically the opposite. And it's phenomenal. But yeah, I love reading just anything by Matthew Stover, not just his novels. Interviews with him are just a delight. He's got such a wit to him. But that is going to be the end of our chapter today. We're through chapter 8. We're now, again, close to halfway through the book. And boy, what a journey it's been. It's such a delight to get to reread this masterpiece. I think it really is, easily the best Star Wars novel, maybe Stover's finest work. And I hope you've all enjoyed reading it with me. I thank you all for showing up today. It's a delight chatting with you, and it's a delight reading to you. I'll be back again next Sunday, hopefully at 10 as usual. Maybe I should just switch it to 11 if I'm going to keep being late for the 10 o'clock. Oh man, you missed it. Unfortunately, we're right at the end here. But I mentioned earlier, I've been posting every chapter to YouTube if you want to check it out. Obviously, it's a little less interesting than live, but you can at least still catch the book, and I will be catching up a little bit. I think I'm still a couple chapters behind on the uploads, but I'll be posting some of them today. You'll subscribe? Thank you. Well, yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you there. I hope you enjoy them. Like I said, I'll be back next Sunday, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And as always, may the Force be with you.